afternoon, everybody. Welcome in. I was sitting around thinking about talking about Michigan football, and that's what we're going to do here today. Just like we do 3 times a week, and then after the games as well. Thanks for being with us here. As always, I usually tell you at the end, but why don't I tell you right here at the front? You know, it's a very good time if you are thinking that you want more Michigan football, especially with the bye week upon us. It's a good time to join up with the Maize and Blue Review. Go to on3.com, smash the subscribe button that says Maize and Blue Review. You get instant access, and away you go. And you're going to be top of mind with everything that's going on with Michigan fans. I'm looking right here. You know, there is a Tigers thread that's up at the top currently. You can understand that with everything that's going on there. But the pass defense is being bandied about and talked about a lot this morning and then all the way into this afternoon. And that is when you look on the horizon, you see USC there. I don't think people are as very concerned about Wisconsin, with good reason, but the USC team, thinking about them a little bit, and the Michigan pass defense, it's understandable. Now, as far as things go here today, Michigan, after 4 games, how they're looking for the playoffs, I'll dive into that. I mentioned the Tigers being talked about with good reason. Tigers and Lions being talked about. I'll have a word or two on both of those, but yeah, it's Michigan. It's the bye week. Let's see where people are at with this team with an extra week to think things over. And you've seen the games, you know the concerns. I'm thinking, I'll ask you, do you like them more after 4 games or less? Does everybody like them more? I think if you can say same. I'm asking you to pick one of those. Now, I had the team before the season losing at Nebraska, and then I picked Michigan to win that game. I did that mostly because of the development. I don't know if it's an emergence. We knew he was going to start, talking about Bryce Underwood from game 1. We knew he was going to start way back. You know, there really wasn't any competition for him, but he has been better than I thought. He hit the ground running, actually hit the ground throwing in game 1. Looked like a freshman in game 2. Was great in game 3. And he wasn't too shabby this past Saturday, but he continues to develop. He's going to get better and better and better. And, you know, that's the good news for Michigan when you just look ahead from what we're talking about, the possibility for them to make the playoffs. And, you know, the wide receiver position, everybody's like, can they get better? They're going to work on it. What about the drops? You know, I was thinking about it today. Do guys really get, and if you have hands of stone, I'm not saying that, you know, specifically anybody has hands of stone, but are you able to get better with practice, with concentration? And the first thing I thought was, I don't know, if you've got slippery fingers and you're not, you know, catching the ball, then how much better are you really going to get at this point? I started Googling it. Chat GPT was saying, yes, so you can get way better, going through all the things that, you know, you need to do. And I was kind of telling Chat GPT, I don't know, Chat GPT, if you really know, I mean, you sound like a coach, but there are other players that could step in if the guys that are there continue with the Butterfinger. So it was one of the question marks heading into the season. Wide receivers, there was 3 big question marks: the wideouts, the quarterback, and the offensive line. Wide receivers, the biggest question mark with this team as we sit here today. How much better they can get. They've got the bye week. It gets where it becomes, I know it's it's probably maybe more than even a half mental thing with the players. But I think that the Wisconsin game is going to be pretty big for all of these wideouts. Underwood, let's just, take you to the first quarter against the Badgers. Bryce Underwood goes back to pass, fires a slant over the middle. There's Semaj Morgan. Boom, it bounces off his chest. The groans, from the collective 110 that will be there is going to be heard by everyone, and especially somebody like Semaj. And so I'm looking for that game to be something where you can build some confidence, throw the ball at these guys early and often, and let's see what they can do. With Semaj Morgan, he's such a talented player, and he can bring you so many things with explosive plays. If he is actually able to hang on to the ball and do something, I start to wonder is if the punt return, that's also a mental thing. You got guys bearing down on you, and it's kind of been an adventure there. Getting Semaj Morgan right. I know that Channing Goodwin, and he's a redshirt freshman. It's his first time on the big stage. It's not like that for Morgan. So I got Morgan in the worry category, not so much with Goodwin because he's just had this experience and got his feet wet, which path he takes over these next couple games. He could become very important. He could be one of Michigan's top 2 wideouts, or, he could really be like, okay, it's going to take him another year. Where Semaj, he's so important with this team, catching punts. He's in his 3rd year. He's the second wideout. Heck, you could make a case that he, at times, he could have been the number 1 wideout. They're going to keep going to him, and it's like he could cost them a game. And punt return, a lot of people, when there's not a lot of people. I mean, it's obvious that watching him in punt return, you're gambling. Yeah, he could take one to the house at any moment. He can also muff it and give it to the other team like he did in the opener. Almost give it to the other team. Completely muffed it. It went, 5 yards this way, and then somehow it checked up and went right back to him. I guess he's living right there. I'm not, it might sound like I'm down. He said, well, you got a funny way of not being down on someone. I'm not necessarily down on Morgan. I'm just, talking about the truth here. And any other way, I don't know, he'll be fine. I mean, you can't say that. Nobody should say that. They'll work really hard and they'll get it right. That's great. They got to clean that up. That doesn't fit either. They got to go out and do it on the field. That's one of those things. Catching the ball for Morgan, for Goodwin, it's like shooting free throws. Ben Wallace of the Pistons is one of the worst free throw shooters statistically in NBA history. I went to a lot of Pistons practices back in the day, and I'd watch Big Ben. He'd stand there on the free throw line, and he'd drain them. It's all boom, 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 10, 15 in a row. And I was like, he's getting a lot better. I'd even say it. I was like, well, Ben looks a lot better. And then you get to a game, brick. So it's a lot different. As you know, standing there, catching the ball at a jugs machine with maybe some speakers in the corner and your teammates, nobody really watching. Then when there's 110 and then another, 110 million watching. So, that's the biggest thing. That's the number one thing where they, can need to get better. And there you go. Can one of the guys, if they are not seeing what they need to see in the practices. But again, sometimes you can do it in practice, but I would say an early drop or a drop is sending somebody to the bench in Wisconsin and giving somebody else another opportunity. You hope it doesn't come down to that. But I think as you talk about all this, that's the thing. If you get a game where you can get a clean game, if you're a receiver catching the ball under your belt, then all right. Now you're going and you're feeling good going out to California. But if you drop one, all of a sudden the moans and groans from the crowd, you should be grabbing some bench and somebody else should be coming in right off the bat. So that's the big thing thinking about in that game. Now, it's interesting that Michigan went into this season and we talked a lot about the offensive line. A lot of the focus was on Link at left tackle. Babalola got hurt, and then Link, had won the job anyways, but it was like, not everybody was feeling great about left tackle. And then against Oklahoma, where Michigan couldn't run the ball pretty much at all, besides the one play, first play, the 75-yarder by Justice Haynes in the second half. I think being concerned, being down on the offensive line, looking at him and saying, look at the starts. Look at what's going on. Who's coming up? You realize that people go a little bit heavy either way. Pretty down on the offensive line after Oklahoma. And then this past Saturday, when you heard analyst after analyst, I would even put myself in there included, saying, Nebraska's got a light front and Michigan should be able to pound them. And so it doesn't mean that now that they have like the electric company or something up there and they've got just a bunch of road graders and it's like the Lions from last year. We'll get to them coming up as well, but they're great and they're sucked. And then it should be Garnera should be starting. I had someone send me a message and say, why can't Sharon Moore, who was an offensive lineman himself and an offensive line coach and an offensive guy, why can't he pick the right offensive lineman to start for Michigan? Last year, he had the rotation with Crippen and Ja Deese. Didn't seem like he could get that right. Now he had Norton and he had Garnera behind a Phobie on all those things. And why can't he get that right? And, I would say, go back to your opening statement of that, he is an offensive line coach and you put these guys, it's not that they don't just look at them and say, oh, they look good in their uniforms. They go through drill after rep and they're graded and then they're going against, their opposite number on the Michigan defense and they're winning the jobs there. But there is something about moving over to a game day where the lights are brighter. And then it's also working in tandem or in unison with everybody else on that line. And I'm not making any excuses or saying, oh, they got it right. Because last year, Sharon Moore kicked the opening week as a first-year head coach. Didn't come into game week. Didn't know who his starting quarterback was talking about, no, we're just going to rotate him. And the competition's ongoing. I was, whoa, that was really alarming. But it was the same thing at center. We're just going to spin him around. We're going to see, and this year was drastically different. Even when he thought that over at right guard, that Norton was going to be the guy and the competition was close, he didn't say, well, we're just going to have a rotation over there. We're not really name, Norton's going to start, but he wasn't great. He should have just said Norton's the guy. And yeah, we like a Phobie and we like Garnera and we need 10 offensive linemen if we're going to be the kind of team, because ultimately, you don't want anybody to go down, but you're going to need them. But, those are the facts. And, maybe he'll be able to clean that stuff up himself with how he presents, the team coming up. But a lot of talk there to say, who do I think is going to be the right guard coming up against Wisconsin? I don't really think it matters when it's against Wisconsin. It's against USC. So if Norton, who won the job, is back and he's 100%, put him in there. And if he performs well, then he should be the guy against USC. But I think there's a push or there's a feeling. People look at the Pro Football Focus grades. Those are, fun to look at. I don't completely dismiss them. I like looking at them myself. I'm not watching the right guard every single play. I'll watch the right guard, and then I'll see, a replay at center of Crippen moving up to the second level. Oh, Crippen's great, and then sometimes the Pro Football Focus grades, back that up. But I'm thinking that if Norton was good enough in spring, and even though he just started there in the fall, but if he was good enough in the fall to win the job, then he should still be the guy if he comes back and he's 100%. Now, look, like I said, sometimes this is not written in stone. And if they get out there, Norton might not be 100%. And the things that they were wondering about Gardnera as a youngster, then when he was thrown in the fire, maybe they do go with him. So I don't know. I'm not trying to, play both sides of the fence or anything else, but that's what's on a lot of people's mind with the bye week, the wide receivers and the drops, who's at right guard, and away we go. So with that, I would like to hear from you. And again, I got the question out there. Do you feel better about this Michigan team after 4 games heading into the bye week than you did before the season? And again, I realize that there's a lot of people that always feel good and they're never going to say they feel bad. So you might have a difficult time answering that question. And, if somebody's going to drop a bag right out of the off the bat, then we should probably go to them. And it's Big Zell. And Big Zell is saying that Peyton O'Leary, Bell, and Browder need more snaps as well. Well, the idea against Wisconsin that everybody should be able to eat and everybody should be able to get some playing time. If I was Peyton O'Leary and Kendrick Bell and Jamar Browder and all those other wideouts, man, I would be ready to go at an instant because these guys could go from, playing on special teams to being the number 1 wide receiver for Michigan quickly if they can hang on to the ball when the opportunity comes to them. So I don't, needing them, the wide receivers, when you line them all up and say, okay, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 could be 1, 2, 3 as quickly as this next game. I mean, that's what's going on here. If we're going to be honest about it, we're watching it and we're seeing how it's going. Now, this is the overkill, but you understand there's somebody, saying that Morgan sucks. And, that's not the case. Samaj Morgan, maybe Michigan doesn't win the game if it's not for Samaj Morgan this past Saturday. So, this is the kind of thing where, you're a fan and, you like to be hard and all these kind of things, but go back and watch the tape or go back when Michigan had their great drive of those 15 plays and they weren't doing anything in third down conversions. And who got them the third down conversion? It was Samaj Morgan. It was one of the bigger plays in the game. So while he's on, it's red alert. And if he drops the first one against Wisconsin, he's riding the pine. And I don't even know if he's going to be the punt returner then because you have to wonder about where he's at mentally. But this is overkill. Yeah, it's not going to continue. Look, if Morgan, I've said this now about 3 times, if he would drop the first pass on against Wisconsin, and then he wasn't taken out, and there wasn't somebody else in there, now we've got a story. Now you could rely on me to go Monday to Sherrone Moore and say, Sherrone, what's more? You're never going to take him out, even if he just keeps dropping it. Are the guys behind him that? I'd have to work on my wording. But are the guys behind him just not able to catch anything either? What's he got to do? What's a guy got to do around here to lose his job? But let's not go overboard. It's like I'm getting going overboard. Robbie is absolutely correct that getting Hansen back will improve the passing game. I'm with you on that. I said Marsh needs to start. I would say that Marsh needs his opportunities. If you put him through hell, whatever that looks like for wide receivers during the bye week that are dropping the ball a lot, have everybody around him saying, you drop this one, you're out, or whatever. And Morgan tests the best, performs the best, and he starts on against Wisconsin. That's not me saying, oh, the coaches suck. But if he drops one and then Marsh isn't in there pretty quick, or Marsh is also not getting some run there, well, you might be on to something. I hear Sterling talking about not only, so we got one saying we need Marsh to start. Now here's Sterling saying they need to play Peyton O'Leary more. I like the spring games as much as anyone, probably more than anyone, because I hear a lot of people, you take nothing, you gain nothing by watching the spring game. And that's not really true. But, Peyton O'Leary 2 years ago, looked like Cooper Kupp at his prime at the spring game. I mean, he was awesome. And, he worked over Amarian Walker and sent him, pretty much, sent him on the road because he was back, at wide receiver, or he went to Ole Miss and then he came back. O'Leary was great. Peyton O'Leary made one play. And that was against Ohio State, which, that's a big spot to do it. And it was one of the great catches. I'll never, it's not like I'm really down on him or something. But the catch was one of the more remarkable catches that you'll ever see. It was kind of like, laying on the couch, and then however he ended up doing it, catching the ball, was great. It'll go down in history. But now just, throwing names out there saying that they need to get in there because the guys in front of them have dropped passes is not something I'm on board with. Now you want to start O'Leary as well. All right, here we go. Rashad wants to start Marsh and Browder. By the way, Browder, who had the last time we saw Browder was in the spring game with 2 balls right at him, and he dropped both of them. So what, out of sight, out of mind kind of thing when it comes down to Browder? What if he's slippery fingered Browder, during camp and they're here? I mean, they can't be worse. I mean, is that where we're going here? Marsh had the end around where he looked like AC. So, I get that. And they haven't screwed up. And they're freshmen. Let's see it, because these guys. But again, my opinion is that however they go through these practices leading up to the Wisconsin game, I'm absolutely fine with whoever they put out there. Really am. If it's O'Leary, if it's Marsh as the starters, well, they must have had, whatever, how many days of practice. They just must have been, sticking it. And the other guys must have been dropping the ball. So that's fine. But if somebody's dropping one in the first quarter, they're going to the bench. That's where it's at right now. Yeah, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to talk about the Tigers a little bit, Big Zell. It's a little bit where it comes down where you got a big strikeout guy, and you think that he shouldn't be up there at all, but then he cranks a home run for you. Riley Green will fit that category for the Tigers. He might strike out 3-4 times. He might get a sombrero, and then the next game he's going to belt 2 home runs. That's why Samaj Morgan is playing. Samaj Morgan is dangerous when he secures the ball and then he has it. He's a playmaker. more than those other guys. So, and again, he made one of the biggest plays against Nebraska. So that's it. Rashad thinks, based on one game, that Garnera should be the right guard. He definitely deserves it because of his play, and El Hadi will be a right guard. I think El Hadi, based on, he's the captain and the amount of starts that he has, I think that he'll be at left. Oh, wait. Garnera should be at right, but put El Hadi back at right. I think you mean left. Yeah, I think it could be. I think Garnera could be at right guard. We know that El Hadi's not going to play against Wisconsin. It doesn't look like. So you're probably going to get both of those guys. The question is, who's going to be the right guard? I guess you got Norton coming back. So you got 3 guards in 2 spots. A Phobie, my guess, would be left. And so then you go to right guard. Are you just saying Norton, he won the job that quick, perform, the hell with him? Because Garnera, look at, we've got, 2 big games to judge these guys on the road at Oklahoma, on the road at Nebraska, Norton, whatever he was here, Garnera. There you go. Kendrick Bell made a great play on the onside kick, showing good hands. Get him out there. I think that's not, I think it's a decent point. How much is that worth when it comes down to it? And then this is it. What we're doing, I think we all understand what we're doing here is that we can only go by what we see in the game. They're not going to tell us what's going on in practice. But as Dr. Detroit says, the reason that the backup wideouts are not playing is most likely they are dropping it in practice, and the coaches know. Or what you have is that the guys that have dropped, Morgan and Goodwin, they don't do any. They've earned their job, but then on the big stage, they've come up with the drops. It is a big deal. Rashad is talking about people being down on Samaj because he trashed Campbell, saying he wasn't using him right. And he's more than bubble screens, but then starts dropping passes when he has chances. I think that people are down on Samaj because it's his 3rd year. And last year, even though last year, he had a promising freshman year when they won the national championship, but then all the receivers and the quarterbacks, they were the worst in the country. We all know that. So everybody was not only on the quarterbacks, which they should have been, and not only on Kirk Campbell, which, he ended up losing his job, but then also on Morgan. Yeah, and it doesn't help when, I'll use your words, trash. Did you say that? Yeah, trash. That's right. Samaj's feast or famine. Not consistent. I agree with that. Thank you. We're all good here. I mean, look at, we're all just talking and do it. And then Rico says it's a lot of guys. It's all these guys. I don't know. Is McCulley? McCulley seems like he's got some pretty sticky fingers, but I think they should use McCulley more. Michigan hasn't thrown down field for several years. It's not something that you just turn on overnight. Interesting, that part. If Fred Moore had good hands, he would be a dangerous weapon. Yeah. If my, aunt had 2 wheels, she'd be a bicycle, right? That's what but what we've seen from Moore is that it was the spring game. One was boom, bounced right off of him. Well, there you go. I didn't say Browder should start. Those were players I wanted to see on the field more. Fair enough. If I ever act like, I'm some prick or, I'm not trying to be. reading stuff in real time. Try not to come off like that. I guess sometimes I can't help it. I come off at the break. All right. I'm going to answer the question that I put out there on, and it falls into where if Michigan is going to make the playoffs or not. If I had to answer that question right now, even though when you look at the Vegas sites that Michigan is bet MGM, were they plus 400? And before the season, it was just plus 150. So they got that loss. So even though Vegas is down on Michigan more than they were at the start of the season because of that loss, I am more bullish on Michigan than I am from the start of the season about them making the postseason. Now, I know they can only lose one more game, and you start looking at the schedule, and you're like, woo, the USC game looms. Of course, the Ohio State, they're not going to be a favorite, I don't think, in either of those games. What was it? SP Plus had the percentages, the ESPN SP Plus formula. They had Michigan as a 43% chance at winning at USC, and then they had 35% of winning against Ohio State. Whatever you think of those numbers, I happen to think the number against Ohio State is a lot higher than that. SP Plus isn't factoring in what Michigan has done the last couple of years and how this rivalry plays out and how Michigan is in their heads. And, they're not factoring that in. That's a tough little number to throw into your equation when you're some math guy or something like that. So I would think that those numbers would be higher. They also had Michigan as just a slight favorite against Maryland, which is a little bit of surprise. And then Washington at 67%. That'll be an interesting one because that's the game. It's Wisconsin, USC, Washington. Let's see how Washington plays this week against Ohio State. Thinking about that one. But I think that Michigan can play the remaining games with just dropping one. And I think that they can make the playoffs, where before the season, I did not think that they were going to make the playoffs. And the reason for that is not just Bryce Underwood, but that's a big thing for me is Underwood. He has been, I thought, spoon feeding him was going to take a while. He's been better and better, and he's dangerous. I also think that it's not just Underwood, like I said. I think the other thing is that, Justice Haynes, I saw him running the ball at Alabama. I did not expect Haynes to be one of the best backs in the country. And a explosive 50, 60, 75-yard run waiting to happen every game. I mean, I wasn't expecting that. I know somewhere I was not. So, that's the second one. And the third one is that sometimes you move the pieces around on defense and it unlocks something. And I think everyone knows where I'm going here. And it's with Jayshon Barham. Now, Barham played last year for Michigan, and I was expecting him to be, because they would say, the coaches and the players, he's just a game wrecker, all these things. And then, I don't know, last year, I mean, Barham, I'm not saying that, I looked at him and thought he was bad, but I wasn't sitting around thinking, oh, this guy's, he's awesome, or he's some difference maker. These last two games, that's exactly what I've thought. I watched Jayshon Barham, and I think he looks like a first-round draft pick. And and Derek Moore's, I knew Derek Moore was great, but you got Barham, straight line, speed, bend, everything that he's able to do, and then you got Moore. That's double trouble for an offensive line. You can help. You always hear the football guys say, well, you shade a tight end, get a back over there to chip. Well, you can't do that when you got two guys coming from the opposite side. It's unlocked this Michigan defense, and As much as, I heard those coaches say, oh, we got this rotation up front. These guys, Trey Williams is a beast. I've seen that. He's a movable object at defensive tackle, the defensive ends, and then, the strength. Sharon Moore was right about Cole Sullivan. Rolder's a good player. Houseman is steady as a rock, man. The front seven for Michigan, that is another reason that I am thinking that Michigan will make the playoffs. Michigan's got a front seven. You start saying best in the country. I don't know if they're the best in the country, but they look good. So then it comes back to the corners, and Earls, everybody was excited about, myself included, but then he got hurt doing the flip in one of those games. So he's just getting back. But, Sanders has been a surprise. I feel good maybe with Rod Moore. That Rod Moore will be back. Will Rod Moore ever be the Rod Moore that he was for the first 3 years for Michigan? That's a question I can't answer. But wherever he's going to be, he was able to get his feet wet at Nebraska. I like the situation now with Wisconsin's. This seems like it's a scrimmage. I probably shouldn't, take them so lightly. But you get Rod Moore, got his feet wet. Now Rod Moore is going to get some more snaps, and then they're going to need Rod Moore. If Rod Moore could be back to being Rod Moore for the USC game, I think they could be cooking back there. Because I do believe, from what I've seen, that Metcalf is a playmaker. So you got Metcalf and Rod Moore. So now it's the corners. And out of all these corners, Shug Hill, 3 of the freshmen. I put Dotson in there. I mean, he was out there, but let's just say Sanders, Hill, and Barry. Can they get those? And I don't know how you can say, what about Brandon Hillman? You're leaving him out. Good point. I was leaving him out. Nice 3 safeties, nice 3 corners, but really you got a front 7. And we're going to find out about them against USC. The USC quarterback can deal. Saw that. And I also saw somebody say, well, if Michigan State can score on them, USC pretty much was blowing them out and was going to cover that 20 points. And then, State, with 2 minutes left in the game, was able to get a late touchdown to cover that spread, which was nice for me because I had $1.91 on MSU. But I don't know if I'm in the camp. I just watched a little bit of that game, but I did notice that State had a late one. And then I have seen people say, well, State can score on them. Well, State scored some points, but I'm not ready to do that. All right, so there I am with everything. I feel better about Michigan than I did before the season. Reasons, Underwood, Haynes, and the front 7. 3 big things to go from there. All right, so before I go and hit on some Detroit sports, which is hot right now and gives me something to do during the bye, certainly before Thursday night football, let's go back and look at some of the feedback. That's where we're at. Ooh, let's see. We were talking about dropping passes. Let's move past that. And Rashad, you're good. You're one of our favorites. If Worms had machine guns, birds wouldn't mess with them. So Jim Harbaugh said that. Corey's not taking any offense. All right. If my aunt had, there you go. What did I say? I just heard the wheels one, and it made everybody laugh. So I just threw it in there. Big Zell, too, who I think is a first-timer here, is coming in. He's a frequent feedback poster. He has now said, we will make it if we learn to tackle better and catch the ball. That's pretty nice and neat how you put that in there. Have they really been that bad? I don't know. I see a lot of people. You watch the games, people are like, Michigan's getting screwed by the refs, and I don't know. They're not getting some calls there, but there's a lot of that's a big deal, and then they're not tackling. I haven't noticed the tackling as much, and I have noticed a few missed penalties, but there's also seems like fans are a little bit maybe obsessed with those two things. I'm not saying you are, but I like how this is nice and neat with a bow on it. The New Life says every facet of Michigan football has improved since Oklahoma, except the receiving corps. Now, that's a nice, neat sentence as well. I think I agree with that one. Good one. Rashad is talking about the media's default is to always favor OSU, despite getting their teeth kicked in for 4 straight years. We could win this one this year and be an underdog in Columbus next year just because. Well, you might be right about, the media. I mean, like, if you look where Ohio State is ranked right now and you look where Michigan is ranked, that's going to have something to do with it. The one thing about the media and the SP Plus, it's not one guy just sitting there saying, oh, I like Ohio State and I don't like Michigan. He uses a formula that has recruiting involved in it. I know people like, I think his name's Bill Connolly. They like his formula, but if we're painting the media with a broad brush, do they default to Ohio State? The Ohio State, they're always in the top 3 or 4 in recruiting. Like, I don't know, the last 20 years, if they've ever been outside the top 5. And recruiting's a pretty big deal. So they've got great talent. Now, what Michigan was able to do is say, hey, we're going to develop our players. And these guys are just living on their, the recruiting rankings. But look, I don't even know what to say. They had all of this and they won the national championship, and Michigan still beat them without a quarterback last year. I'm feeling pretty good about Michigan's chances, and it's at least for me, I felt it over the last 20 years. When Ohio State had that, I don't know, was it a 16-year run? They were on my mind all the time. I was thinking, they're never going to beat Ohio State. They were totally in my head, and I knew they were in the player's head and they were in the coach's head. That's a big deal. Throw the fans out. Ohio State was in Michigan's head. You get down there in the field, it's like, oh, this is going bad. Coaches trying different things. And now it's flipped, and you see it. I remember when in 1997, John Cooper had started Joe Germain for the first 11 games. I don't know if there was 10 games back then, probably just 10 games. So, but then he flipped his quarterback because it was Michigan, and he started Stanley Jackson, and he threw an interception. I think he threw a pick 6 to Andre Weathers. Actually, he threw a couple pick 6, or not a couple pick 6s, but he threw one to Woodson as well. So Cooper, maybe Michigan would have won that game anyways, but Cooper effed that up. Ryan Day, part of it, I like to credit Michigan's defense. There's no doubt. And it wasn't all. I know there's a lot of Michigan fans that don't like the narrative that Ohio State, played right into Michigan's hands by running at Michigan's defensive tackles last year. I'm buying a little bit of that. I mean, that's not the whole thing, but I'm buying a little bit of that because Day knows that everybody's calling him soft and Ohio's soft and you can't. I mean, that's all it's drilled into his head. And, he was going to show everybody that was not the case. So, yeah, I think that Michigan's in their head, and that is where I stand on Michigan and Ohio State. Corey says he doesn't think Michigan will make the playoffs with 2 losses. He doesn't trust the college football committee. No, I don't trust them with 3. If it came down where it was like, what was it last year? It was Alabama, and then they already had whoever those other teams were that ended up getting in. They already had them in front of Alabama, and then when that team actually won the conference championship, they kind of put themselves into a corner where they couldn't jump Alabama. But the thing was, and I thought they were going to, if it's a 3-loss situation, I think being nervous, I don't know, you say, oh, the people have it out for Michigan. They have them out for Michigan because they're good, because they're a big brand. I tend to think those things help Michigan, not hurt them. I know not everybody thinks that, but there is the Stallions part where, they could be like, let's not give Michigan a benefit of the doubt because of Stallions. I think that's a factor. Could be a factor. I don't know how much of a factor it is. It's hard to say when it comes down to that. If everything was, it came in, it was Michigan and this other team, could that committee be like, let's overlook Michigan here. They deserve it. I think that's possible. I don't know, but 2 losses. If Michigan doesn't make it with 2 losses, Corey, I mean, now we'll be on to something. That's it. I think Corey makes a good point here. Earls needs to start locating the ball because he has the speed to keep up with the wide receivers. Yeah, I don't know how much, if that was his first extensive playing time, but the pass down the far sideline where he got flagged, right? I mean, yeah, that wasn't, as you'd say, textbook defense. So I'm right with you on that. And yeah, Sanders did look good. Here's Salute saying Metcalf is a Beyblade on defense. I'm going to think, because Metcalf is good. I'm not necessarily sure what a Beyblade is, but I think that's a compliment. What's a Beyblade? A line of spinning top toys developed by Takara Tommy. Here's a picture of it. Spinning top toy. Is that good? If you say a Beyblade? I don't know. Aaron says Hillman hits people with hate in his heart. It's beautiful. Yeah. Hillman was one of those guys that when he was knocking guys out, like in the Indiana game, when he knocked 2 players out of that game, it was one of these where you said he's a throwback, where if he was playing in the 20th century, he might be a first round pick. And you say, he plays the game like Ronnie Lott or Steve Atwater or all these, the Benny Blades. I mean, these safeties just come out and rock you, pound you. And then is there a place for a knockout artist and a hitter like Hillman in today's game? And last year I was thinking probably not. He's going to get too many 15-yard penalties. He's going to get too many targeting. But with the exception of last week, and then they picked the flag up, that he still get 15 yards. They didn't get the targeting. He hasn't even been flagged. So if he can continue with the hatred and big hits and then celebrate with his teammates, now you've got something. It's a lot easier said than done. I know everyone was on it. I was on him too. You don't go taunt the sideline. You're just asking for it. I wouldn't even be screwing around with the crowd. I mean, I would make sure, that you're celebrating your teammates. But, there's also a part where I think some of this has been good, where they've won some games and then they've had some of these extracurricular things that Sharon and the staff could talk to them about, that, that is something you can clean up. Right? Big Zell's a new member. That's good to see, a subscriber. I like it. Salute says, with all of the allegations, Michigan will get penalized more than the rest of the country. We have a bullseye on us and expect nothing less. I can't confirm or deny. You're talking about an official. Do they go into this game and say, "Oh, let's go ahead, 15"? I don't know. Maybe. Previous to Burgergate and Stallions, I used to think that Michigan fans were probably like a lot of other fan bases, that they thought that everybody was persecuting them, that they were getting a bad shake, and that the officials were against them. And I always told Michigan fans that they got that wrong, that Michigan's one of the big dogs on the block. They're a money generator, and that if it all comes down to push and shove, and we're talking about, sure, some calls will go against them, but, that's going to happen. But Michigan's one of the halves. And when you're one of the halves, you get calls more than the others. That's the way human nature works. It's the way, Wayne Gretzky would, Greg Maddux would get a call on the block. All of these things would happen. But, since these last couple of years, I don't know. I think I completely understand where people would say that the refs are out to get them, or they're if it comes down to one call and the guy's got his hand on his penalty flag, will he be like, screw him? I don't know. Woo! Yeah. Couple more. Are we going? People are talking about the Tigers, and I said we were going to talk about that. But we'll take one more for Sam, who says, when Bryce figures out how to use touch, he's going to be lethal. He has shown some touch, but when he's getting better and better, to me, I'm ecstatic about Bryce Underwood. I know everybody's like, you like Bryce Underwood? It's like, yeah, I like him. I mean, I like where he is at. It's looking pretty good. Okay, here's the new life's going to kick us off when we said that we'd hit, 98% of the time. I'm talking about Michigan. But the Tigers and Lions both have something worthy of talking about right now. First, the Lions, the Monday night game, that was, last year was, I thought, like, after the Lions beat the Cowboys, I thought that was peak Lions. I'd never seen a team that looked like they were on the top of the mountain, the way they played. Then they ended up having the 1 seed. I don't know what happened after that, but the 15 wins, it was like, this is their shot. They look like they can win the Super Bowl. They are going to win the Super Bowl. And everybody picked them to win the Super Bowl last year, at least get there. And then, heading into this year, they had a lot of question marks. The offensive line, which was their biggest thing. They lost both coordinators. Goff, you got to give him time. And then they played the game like they did on offense. And then, the defense played as well as they possibly could, getting Lamar Jackson on the ground, forcing a turnover, getting big 4th down stops. The Lions are obviously back, and you feel as good. You should feel as good as you've ever have about them and their chance maybe to win the Super Bowl. That's how good things are going with them. Now, the Tigers, the new life says, dear God, what happened? Unbeatable before the All-Star game, and then mediocre to free fall ever since. Reminds me of the 68 Cubs. Now, the 68 Cubs is not a team that I'm familiar with that much, but Ernie Banks on the 68 Cubs, Ferguson Jenkins, I don't know. when I saw, I said this on Monday, back in 2006, the Tigers were going to win the Central. And I don't know what big of a slide. It wasn't this big of a slide because this is like the biggest collapse ever. But it was a semi-collapse where they didn't win the Central. The Twins won it on the last day. They backed in, and nobody thought they were going to do anything. Then they lost to the Yankees in Game 1, and everybody had, written them off. And then they caught fire and ended up making it to the World Series. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. Getting in and just, you get in and then you can win some games. All this is forgotten. But, when I saw Skubal fire the ball between his legs, snap like, I'd never seen anything like that. I'd never seen anybody try that in baseball history, let alone in a gigantic game for first place with everybody's eyes on you with the greatest, one of the greatest pitchers in Tigers history. For him to try that and do that, it feels like one of these moments where if it ends up being a collapse, that I'm never going to forget that. Now, they could make me forget that if they, start doing some positive things. But right now, out of everything that they've been through, striking out, free falling, the weak deadline, all of this stuff is boiled down to Skubal throwing the ball between his legs and throwing it into right field. Watching this team is a little bit, to me, reminiscent of watching the Red Wings and Pistons over the years when they would get down to 0-3 in the World Series in 2012 against the Giants. I can remember watching Game 4, light flurries coming down, and I'm just sitting there. And the Tigers' bats go completely cold like they are right now. And you just watch it, and it's just like, forget even getting a game and thinking, one more, they could, get it to 6. They couldn't even get a guy on base, and it's just, it's torture. The Wings one year were down, I think the Sharks. It was kind of the same thing. I actually think they ended up winning a few games, but you just watch and no goals, bunch of goals for the other team. It's just, you're just kind of waiting for it. If, you go, I don't know, maybe just turn it off, but, you don't do that. You just sit there because you watch all year long. And in baseball, it's 20 times worse. You've watched a million hours of baseball and watching this team, the celebration, the All-Star game, that was their championship this year, is getting all those guys into the All-Star game. And to watch it now, I would still, it's hard for me to tell everybody, hey, you just need to get in. That, and I know that. But they just, it's like Ohio State against Michigan right now. The Tigers, it's between their ears. These guys are expecting the other shoe to drop. They're expecting that nobody's going to hit and nobody's going to make a play. I know Dirks in the first couple innings, things are changing. No, they're not. But that's what it's like. It's Ohio State is the Detroit Tigers right now. Go back to what we were saying earlier. Whew, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. All right, we'll take some feedback here at the end. Cut from a different cloth. You would think Ohio State would win if it was just about recruiting. Vaughn's first feedback says he feels better about the team after Nebraska, but to me this year was going to be a transition year, ! Continued improvement with the possibility of making the playoffs, but probably not. Yes, that's a nice, it's okay. I completely understand that. Have fun, but don't press yourself into feeling like it's a disaster. if they don't make the postseason. I don't know. I'm buying what you're selling, Vaughn. I don't know if anybody else is. And certainly if they lose a few of these games, talking about next year, when you're still alive, it doesn't feel good saying, hey, they're just playing with house money right now. It doesn't feel like that. I don't care how much money people are like, well, they spent so much money. I don't care. I think they got a shot. Here's a question from Big Z. 2 L's. But he only has 1 L. Big Zell 2 L's? Big Zell 2 L's. Okay. Now you put it together, it sounds better. Who do you think gives us the best pass protection at DB and safety? Rod Moore is going to take time to get comfortable. Well, I think Moore, hopefully, I think you got the three with Hillman and Metcalf and Moore, Rod Moore. I mean, how many more, Mangham and Mason Curtis? I'm surprised we haven't seen more of Mason Curtis. I think it's Zeke Berry and Jair Hill, but I don't know. Am I going with one game and, putting Jaden Sanders in there over Hill? I still think it's Hill, Berry, and Sanders, those three. And then they do a lot of matching up when it comes to that nickel. You got a lot of different guys there. Wolverine Gage says, if Davis Warren beat Ohio State, then Underwood most definitely is. Well, isn't that the thing? That gets back to anytime you hear someone say, it's completely understandable what you're saying, just like the people that say if Michigan had a quarterback last year, they'd have been in the playoffs. But if Michigan had a quarterback against Ohio State, would they really have won 13-10? Would Ohio State have played the same game? Would Michigan have said, it would have been different. Everyone that plays the Michigan would have made the playoffs last year. They'd have won 2-3 more games for sure. Well, would they have beat Ohio State by 3 points? Would they have banked on Khalil Mullings having a 63-yard run from his own 20 with, time running down? Or would they have been throwing the ball a little bit more? I'm not, those are 2 wins, and I don't necessarily just chalk up. But I hear what people are saying, and it's fun to get in there. There we go. Thanks, Aaron. Aaron saying like the video. Yeah. The Tigers. Whew. Last season was a roller coaster for Michigan. Oh, let's see. You had Fresno and terrible against Texas. Arkansas State wasn't the greatest game, and then it was USC. That was a great win against USC. Then Minnesota, they were up 21-3 at the half. Had to hang on. It was 24-3 in the fourth quarter against Minnesota last year, and they won 27-24. So that in itself, you get after that game, they win the Browns. I can't handle it. And they go to Washington. And for 3 series with Jack Tuttle in there, I was thinking, yeah, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Then 2 3-and-outs, fumble, and interception. Kind of the same thing against Illinois. Jack Tuttle, interception, and fumble. I haven't talked about the Michigan State game. That's probably the best thing. Just leave that one out there. Yeah, it was a roller coaster. Good point. I decided to jump on that roller coaster for a second. Salute with Loveland, Mullings. I think this is Edwards. And our defense with a better quarterback, we would have been in the playoffs. And there you go. Hard to say. I'm not here to knock it. I'm just here to say that, those are fun things to say, but you don't really know. If the Tigers would have been able to get Bergman, they'd be in the postseason already. That feels true. If the Lions got another defensive end, they would be, Mohammed I didn't come out of nowhere, but he played like Brad Holmes knows what he's doing, which I do think is the case. All right. So the case here is that it's even without Michigan, it's a very nice weekend of football on tap. Friday, we'll be back to talk about it all. Thanks so much for joining us. People mention, subscribing. It's free. It's great, for the Maize and Blue Review to see you have a subscription number up. It's good. Any comments that you make, any liking the videos, and then join up the Maize and Blue Review, all the Michigan coverage you can handle. You can be a part of it. It's all day. It's all night. It's ongoing. Go over to on3.com and smash the subscribe button. And with that, everybody have a great day. Let's tell you, go Tigers. Tigers need it. Go do something. Don't, hike the ball between your legs. Get some hits. Win a ball game. Get back into the league. Make the playoffs. All right. Have a nice day.